just a quick couple minutes, give me 30 seconds on myself. So I first came here when I was with the Dallas Cowboys running that brand. Spoke, it was 6 years ago. I have come back every year since. This is just an amazing place. I have made real friends here, lifelong friends here. And you guys have that opportunity too, which is really amazing. For those of you guys who are new, I'll just tell you that the two things I love most about this by far is definitely the people for one. And it's not just these guys, it's not just the whole cult crew who are amazing, it's not just the speakers who are amazing, but it's everybody. And it's this unbelievable group of marketers that are here, and that's honestly what drives me back. And the second thing is the content. You know, I've been to a million conferences, I'm sure many of you have, and they suck. I mean, you walk up there and the content sucks, and you don't want to sit in, and you don't want to listen, and you don't learn anything. And I will say is, you know, I've learned so much here, and that's incredible. So between those two things, this opportunity for you all is really amazing. I will say, you know, a lot of people come in 2s or 3s or 4s, and I'm sure you're all sitting together, and I'm sure you'll sit together at lunch, and I'm sure you'll sit together at dinner. The one thing I will recommend on this one, and these guys have their own thoughts, is like, just break apart from your group. Go your own way and talk to people you've never talked to, and walk up to people and approach them and talk to them and say, hey, just this is my name, this is what I do. Ask a lot of questions. There's a lot of amazing people and a lot of amazing experiences, just like one step out of your comfort zone. Do that for yourselves. It just will make a better conference for yourself. So all in all, the one thing Chris did make sure to tell me was that this is an opening act before I got up here. So don't be let down is actually how he phrased it. I asked him if he knew who he was talking to, but apparently he did. So don't be let down. The show really starts in an hour. For a lot of you guys, this for all the new people for sure, this is kind of a bit of an orientation on how to get the best out of gathering, why it kind of what started, and then how to get the best out of your experience here. So without further ado, we'll switch to some talking points. So I'll first start with Ryan. Take all these guys back a little bit, 7 years ago, or I guess maybe probably 8 years ago when you first started the idea. Tell me the overall purpose and why this kind of came about.
Yeah, thank you. And it's great to see everyone here. And really why we did this is to make sure everyone gets here for the 1 o'clock, so it's working. We'll make this valuable. I was at South by Southwest, so about 9 years ago. And a guy named Hugh Forrest who runs that event. I got to meet him and stuff. And right before that, I was at a TED event. And I just mentioned this in my inner sanctum a few minutes ago, but I loved the TED event, but it was after a few days, I was like, my head's going to fucking explode. And then I went all the way to South by Southwest. Who's been to South by? And I was like, this is amazing, but it's just a crazy party, and I don't know where to go. And it was like these two polar opposites. And I was like, that was the spark of the idea of how could we create an event that, because I think too much party, you lose the focus of why you're there, and too cerebral, it's like it gets overwhelming. So I said if they could have sex and have a baby, that could create something special. And so that was the genesis of it for me. But no, Chris and I, for those that don't know the history, basically I had a digital agency that I sold to Chris. Sounds fancy, it wasn't that fancy. And he owned
it. Was in foreclosure.
Yeah,
I got a good deal.
got a deal. And we basically came together, and we both didn't want to do something. We had been in the business for a long time. We didn't want to be labeled by what we did as far as digital or traditional. We wanted to do something more consultative, but we wanted to be narrow in our focus. And so we landed on Cult, our agency Cult, and we would only work with cult brands. Little did we know that we went from having thousands. I can hardly hear myself, so maybe everyone can hear me okay?
I got you.
Maybe you can turn it up here in the monitors. Little did we know we went from having millions of potential customers to just a handful or hundreds, and that was terrifying. But out of the gate, we don't know if it was 6 weeks. That's better. 6 weeks or 3 weeks or 6 weeks, but we got a call from Harley Davidson out of the gate, which should arguably be one of the most cult-like brands, but they were struggling. And so they hired us, and then after that, a local cult-like brand called Big Rock Brewery called us. So we were off to the races, and then silence. We were like, who are we calling? We were calling people with cult brands that didn't get it or they didn't fit. And so a guy named Rob Howard was in my office who worked for us, a very brilliant guy. He'll be on stage throughout the week here. Said, the Grammys were invented, right? And I said, yeah, I get it. All these award shows were invented. Why don't you invent an award and use it as a Trojan horse to get clients to come and meet with you, just to speak honestly. And I said, great idea. And so we created this award and sent out about 100 direct mail invitations. By the way, direct mail done well still works very well and cuts through. And to our surprise, I think 63 brands said they accepted our nomination. And from that, we picked 8. And it took off, and I tell this truthfully because I think it's important for the purpose. We didn't know it was too expensive to travel in the world and find these cult brands, so we wanted to get them to come to us. It was pretty brilliant, we thought. And we got them to come here. I think 150 to 200 people came the first year. 150 of them we tricked into coming, and we sold 50 tickets or something like that. And about an hour into it, I called like a team meeting and said, guys, it was just so good out of the gate, the content.
Yeah.
It was so honest. I said, we cannot sell cult stuff here. We can't ruin this and fuck it up by trying to sell something. And I said, not only that, we're putting a moratorium on even doing business with any of these brands for a few years afterwards. So we put this protective barrier in place. I think that what that did, Matt, was make the brands on stage feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And set the table for it.
Yep.
That is a safe place to not get pitched. And then they were able to be vulnerable and honest. And that was the start of it. And then we wanted to not just talk about, cult. We didn't want to talk about what it takes to make a cult brand. We thought we'd show it and just put people on stage and say, here you go. That's how you do it. It's a different playbook. It's not advertising. It's not, what people, markdowns or promos. Cult brands do it differently.
Yeah.
And it's funny, often they don't actually sell either.
Yeah.
They start movements. So that's what we try to do.
It's awesome.
That was a long-winded, but hopefully that was good.
It's good. Just go one more thing too quick. Is like talk about the evolution a little bit of first year. I was just sitting with Rob, and he was showing me the ballroom in which you did the first year's kind of event. But just talk a little bit about the evolution of from where this came to where we are in year 7 right now.
Yeah, really. I think Chris led it. So Chris leads the content, and he gets all the credit for curating what this is and who speaks at what time. We always thought about FOMO. So you'll be pissed at us, which is fine. We try to put a speaker that you'd love to see, and what would that same cohort want to see, and we'll put them at the same time, just to piss you off. But no, he really tries to curate it in a place that the whole thing flows properly to the end.
Yep.
And we listen, though, Chris and I, we come to this, and we're part of it, and it sucks we're on stage doing stuff here and there because I actually like listening more, and we do get to go sit front row and listen to it. And all the brands that we hear speak literally talked about getting it started and then getting out of the way. So I'd love to give you a packaged answer, but I feel like it's just evolved, and we've listened to the audience, your critiques and tough feedback. We love it, and we can't do everything, but we try to. So we really followed cult brand principles to build this thing, and it's evolved, and listen, we are super early. We're in our 7th year. It's been amazing. But we have dreams of this is going to be happening at the same time at the Banff Center, in Canmore, Lake Louise. Chris is like, oh, shit. But we're really early, and one of our board members, Hugh Forrest, who runs South by Southwest, says, he always pats me on my head. He's like, oh, you're early. And I love that because we feel we are. And so we got a long way to go, but I'm really happy with it. It's not a conference, and I went to Summit. We tried. It's just not. Yeah. It's not what I used to go to. And I don't like to bitch and complain about other things, but they just feel greasy, and we try not to do that here.
It's amazing. Chris.
Let me do a follow-up on that, because I think two other things that have evolved is, so year 1, we did that pivot of this can't be about cult. A lot of great brands stepped up to partner. I remember Air Canada in the early days said, can we help? I'm like, please, this is expensive and hard to do. And they said, well, we'll fly everybody in, and we'll take care of that airfare part. The city of Las Vegas said, well, we know how to throw a party. We're freaking Las Vegas. So they said, we'll take care of the after party stuff. And Molson said, we can take care of stuff. So I think of the gathering as an open sourced conference where people that are inspired by these stories that want to have this kind of a conversation are just throwing themselves at this thing. Look, I want to be a part, and we are grateful for that. And then the other part was we had to get sort of more scientific on how we chose the winners. So year one was people that would return our phone calls. But then it became, what's the criteria that we're going to use? And it got, that's probably been the fastest learning curve, because even IBM, who's been a sponsor the past couple of years, said, let's put Watson into this. So we were having interns, look up publicly available data, do social sentiment scoring, and then it was like, let's just replace that with computing power to be able to assess stuff. So
Yeah, when we brought in Watson, it used to take us like 3 or 4 months to cull through. So the first year we picked, then we got scientific. We created a 38-point scorecard or whatever it was. Chris and Rob Howard did that. And then but it was taking us months because we wanted to be sure, right? It's not like greatest advertising. That's not called. It's like internal engagement, financial performance, all this kind of longevity. And when we brought in Watson, that helped so much.
It's awesome.
Shortened it.
Chris, talk to these guys about how to do this conference right. I know you've talked about that a lot, and what should they be thinking about? What should they be doing?
So let me give you the biggest piece of advice is come here with intentionality about what you're hoping to get out of it. And really, I really ask the speakers to be very clear about what they're going to talk about. Because I remember a couple of years ago, Marvel was here, and everybody loves Marvel. It's like, who doesn't want to hear from Marvel? But it was at the same time, there was another session going on that I know people would have gotten tremendous value out of in terms of it was Accenture talking about 8 trends for 2019 that could disrupt your business. And so people were fanboying on Marvel because they thought maybe Chris Hemsworth was going to be in the room or something. It wasn't. It was the senior VP, vice president of marketing talking about Marvel. And just because she's great, no offense to Mindy, but we had 900 people in this room listening to her and 100 people in the other room. And I felt bad because I was like, this room is going to change more people's businesses, but they just wanted to see the Marvel videos. So really be selfish and say, I need to get something out of this. I need an ROI out of this ticket, and find out what the speakers are going to say and use that to dictate which session you go to, rather than just, well, I love Porsche, so I'm going to go to the Porsche session.
And shout out to the speakers. Matt experienced this when he was the CMO at the Dallas Cowboys. They like, this doesn't happen. Speak at conferences. They speak and they go off and they go to the room. The 74 speakers or whatever you have here. It's funny because I remember Mike Germano of Vice was here, and he was on stage and he's like, oh, CMO of Airbnb. Oh, CMO of Las Vegas Tourism. Like, his front row was filled with people that were trying to learn too. There's just a spirit of learning here. And Matt talked about at the beginning, in your sessions too, turn to the person beside you and just say hello, because it might be your big break. It's crazy.
That would be the second part, and I think you mentioned it in your intro, Matt, is there will be amazing content, but what we hear more is the connection that was made, and you don't make a connection if you sit next to somebody that you know the whole time. We put a lot of emphasis into what we call night gatherings, so there's groups of people that will get in cohorts of 10 or 15 and go do dinner together. Unfortunately, and Ryan can talk about this, but they closed the bar down for construction, but that area was this very special place where people were making connections. So we've tried to recreate it off of the breakfast area. The Vermilion restaurant now has we call it a sanctuary that's been opened behind that. That's a gift for you guys to be able to go in there and to meet people. This isn't one of those conferences where the people come, speak, and then get on a plane and leave. They stay. So if you liked what somebody said, find an opportunity to meet them afterwards and really exchange a meaningful connection.
You don't want me to talk about it because I'll lose my shit. When we found out about this, it was like 6 weeks ago, and we've done our best to recreate it, but the tons of money we spend on all these rooms and activations, it doesn't matter. It was the Rundle that was the heartbeat of this thing. And when they told me it was gone, it fucking ripped my heart out. Excuse my language, Mom. But it really did. So we tried to. So please work with us. What makes a room and a social lounge good anyways to people? So it's hard to find, but go to the Vermilion. It's way at the back. And I asked them to make big signs, and then I came in. I was like, that's the big sign? So don't talk to me about it because I'm pissed.
Chris, talk a little bit about emerging brands. I know sometimes, you see the big names here. Obviously, as speakers we want to see, I want to see, of course. Emerging brands are things that people haven't heard of. Talk a little bit about, I guess, what you've seen that has been special in the emerging brand speeches
Yeah.
prior to and this year going forward?
It's actually one of the things that we struggle with because a lot of people say, well, I'm not going to go to the gathering because I'm not the Dallas Cowboys or I'm not Levi's or I'm not Jack Daniels or whatever these big brands are. That's not the point. Every one of those brands started as a small brand.
Yep.
And I remember when Tim Hortons was here, they put a picture of like their first donut shop. And it looked like every same crappy donut shop that's in every town. It's like, what was the difference? That they didn't stay the small local donut shop, but they became, the pride of Canada. And so everybody has something to learn regardless of the brand's life cycle or life stage. And we have so when we're doing our our nominations, the science is kind of dictating now what the brands are, but we always have an open nomination. So we always like to have people say, in addition to what we're formally aware of, if you know of a brand, please let us know, because emerging brands are typically one of three things. Very regional. So like if you live in Pennsylvania, you know what Wawa is and you know why it's special. If you don't live there, you don't. Or maybe you don't know about Sonic Burger or In-N-Out. There's all these regional players that are amazingly cult-like. They just don't get on our radar because they exist in a state or a city.
And they're actually, I had this brought up in my Inner Sanctum session. Looks like I'm going to stand up. Inner Sanctum session is we're actually probably going to go deeper in that. Like most true cult brands are the ones that people haven't heard of. They have this crazy little cult following. We put the big brands on stage, much like a music festival. We need headliners, and but they did start out small, and so you can learn from them and be inspired. But going forward the next few years, as we race towards year 10, which is crazy to think about, I would love at year 10 to be those. It should be almost like discovery session, like if just you're going around and say, wow. I remember when Filson came. Now some people might know Filson, they've been around for 120 years or so. We had them here 4 years ago, and their story is incredible, and they're now having their day in the sun. So it's not always emerging brand new regional. They could be around for 100 years and now they're getting love. It's so exciting because they play by a different playbook and they don't advertise. Another clarity I want to make, because I think people get it twisted. Chris and I like advertising, we love it, but the over-reliance on it is what puts people out of business, okay? So the greatest brands, the cult brands in the world, we don't hate advertising or market, like promotions, that kind of stuff. No, of course, it's part of the playbook, but what we celebrate here and what you should learn, and whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, a big consumer brand, it doesn't matter. The playbooks that these people give you will change your business and change your life.
Agreed. Chris, talk a little about Inner Sanctums. I'm not sure how many people know what they are and how valuable they are.
So one of the things, so yourself, Matt, so we honor the Dallas Cowboys, then what happens when we like Matt, but the Dallas Cowboys aren't being honored the next year? So we needed a home for the alumni to go to. And so we created this little thing called an Inner Sanctum, and these are big stages with 500 people, not that intimate. And so Ryan had this idea of we wanted to do camping chairs and a fire, and the Fairmont wasn't particularly fond of open fires in the building, so we decided to do beanbag chairs, no screens, no presentation, really sort of more of a mentoring session. And I think we did 8 3 years ago, and they sold out instantly. And then it was like, all right, well, maybe we should do more and make them a little bit bigger. They're part of the All Access Pass. They do typically sell out, and they don't cost extra. They RSVP. It's a shameless plug. It's one of the reasons why you should get your ticket early. So I think this year we have 24 or 25 Inner Sanctums, I've been told. There's still a few openings. I'm disappointed. I think mine's one of the ones that's not sold out yet. But there's if you at the registration desk you can find out. But it's a really intimate opportunity to not be preached to, but to ask questions. How did you get that job? How did you convince your boss to do that scary thing? How do you work with a difficult board of directors? So it's actually been one of our real pleasant surprises of how popular this is.
And there's rules there. You'll see the rules when you show up. There's no phones. Personal questions. I've sat in a few of them, and wow, they're game changing. And there's a guy that I met in Chicago this year. I think I know he lives in New York now. His name's Tim Nolan. I don't know if he's here, but I was explaining to him the event, and then he asked about these Inner Sanctums and things like that. And he's been to lots of stuff. He's a hotshot creative, and that's a compliment. And he actually helped us with some of our brand this year. It's cool. But he got it right away, that intimate part. These are amazing, but I can't stress the Inner Sanctums enough. I want them to become what we're known for, because we really do celebrate brands, and you'll see at the gala. Way more important than that is the people behind the brands. And Chris and I have not done business with 99% of the people we have here, just to pull the cover off this thing. But we've created friends with 100% of them. And they became lifelong friends, and you can have that too, and it starts at those types of things.
Yeah, it would be Chris and 30 cult gathering volunteers, I think, in his, so you can join that. It would be nice.
I'll come, Chris.
My wife hasn't even signed up for my entertainment.
Chris, mine had standing room only. Just saying.
So, all right, now I was told to ask you about night gatherings, and I thought about this because if I had called my girlfriend this morning and said I had this mind-blowing night gathering last night, I feel like we'd have a problem. Is she correct?
No. These are, well, listen, my night gatherings might be very different than Ryan's night gatherings. There's a couple of things that happen. So to the spirit of South by Southwest and Ted having a baby, part of what South by Southwest does do is create a bit of an ecosystem of entertainment. So it starts with the welcome reception this evening, as well as a bunch of, I think there's a dozen groups that you could sign up for at the registration to just meet people. So particularly if you came by yourself, don't dine in your room. You know, the old adage, never eat alone. Tomorrow night is the big gala for those who have tickets for that. It is sold out, so make sure that you are ticketed. And then following the gala, there's an after party. And then I've been told there's a thing called an after party, which I'm way too old to participate in, but that is going on all throughout the city of Banff. And then Friday night is the gathering music. So it's actually, it's in its infancy. One of the things that we've discovered in the brands being on the stage talking about how they create emotional connection is their affiliation with music. And whether it's Converse or Spotify or Beats by Dre, I mean, Beats by Dre and Spotify are obvious connections to music, but other brands are less obvious, but they all lean into music. So we're just students. So we're saying, what's that connection? And as well as bands themselves are brands. You know, the Grateful Dead and Jimmy Buffett are two of the most cult-like brands on the planet. Jimmy Buffett, he's a Hawaiian shirt guy. But anyway, if you study their branding, we decided that there's a whole other ecosystem there. So Friday night, there'll be some brands, Yeti and Molson are sponsors of that. And so you're welcome to participate in that. So don't just fill your brain, but, you know, fill your soul.
I'll add one more piece to that music part. So when we sat here, it wasn't just what he mentioned, Beats by Dre, Game, Spotify. It was Dallas Cowboys. It was Levi's. Music, the greatest brands in the world, lean into culture. Culture affects them as much as they affect culture. And music wasn't a tactic they used. Music was who they were. And so as we sat there in the first few years, I talked to them, and I think it was someone from Vice or someone said, you should start a music festival. I said, go F yourself. I did not want to do that. We got a lot of stuff to do, but they kept forcing me, and actually they created, the brands helped create our early days, a kind of a steering committee for us to really help artists. And another thing that's happening in music, and I'll get on my soapbox for a minute, is the artists aren't making as much money, especially the smaller ones, and so they're doing brand partnerships, and it's not selling out anymore. It's the way they make money. And so come and support that. It is part of the future of where this event is going, and to be more culturally relevant.
Real quick, and we got to wrap soon, but just give real quick on the voting for the final.
Thank you. So, you know, we've got to select the 8 honorees and the 3 emerging brands. You guys get to select the People's Choice Award. So on your Bizzabo app, which is where you'll be going to read all the descriptions, there's a button at the bottom called Polls. If you click that, the 8 honorees will be there. And as you sit in their sessions, or as you've, you know, you shopped their products, decide which one that you think is the most cult-like in terms of this Lifetime Achievement Award. It's not who did the coolest campaign this year, but what brand do you think is the most relevant in your life? And at the end of the gala, we'll announce that sort of People's Choice Award and give that brand some special recognition. So that's an all play, and that's your homework over the next 48 hours.
Awesome. So listen, we got to wrap. Thank you guys so much. Thank you all for coming early and being here. Enjoy your time. If it's your first time, this is an amazing, amazing event, and enjoy every single bit of it. And come say hey. We're around.
Thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
we start
guys.
in a half hour.